So, some more musings from me. You know, in this world of duality, we have to be grateful for it, obviously. Even in this industry that I'm in, which is really the life insurance industry, um, but then I do a spin off of that called infinite banking. But the idea that there's purity in anything, for those of us that have lived long enough, have realized that, well, there is no purity with humanity, perfection. So I could beat up on the life insurance industry a bit, and I probably will momentarily. You know, um, the disclaimer is here. I make money doing this. This is how I chose to make a living. Um, but I feel it's valuable work. You know, I have options. I could do different things. Um, but and I also choose to try to do not in an altruistic or, you know, again, perfect way. I'm choosing to do things that I think are really valuable to the greater society. Um, and I have choices though. If I want to make money, sometimes I have to decide whether, um, hey, will I do something that the market seems to want, or is there's a lot of energy behind that market, meaning there's a lot of activity, a lot of marketing going on, a lot of um, you know, familiarity, or you know, there's just a big swell of energy behind it, so it makes it easier to sell, to produce income. But in fact, that isn't always the right thing to do. You know, it isn't the best thing for the consumer, but you know, the consumer relies on the so-called specialist to, you know, direct them in the right way. Um, you know, they everybody paints themselves as this professional, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but the fact is, people do a lot of work, not just in the life insurance industry, but across all occupations, because it pays. It pays. It's a good paying job. It has good benefits. It's all this stuff. But behind the scenes, is that really good for society? Is it really good for your fellow man? And I can say that one of the pet peeves I have right now is there's such a push, at least from my vantage point. I'm getting marketed to by organizations that will create leads of prospects for you to talk to. I mean, you have to pay for them, but they have put a whole pitch behind it. Um, People believe that that's the way to go. Um, when it comes to life insurance, even people are using one of the types of permanent life insurance. It's called permanent. It's categorized as permanent. I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. And it's really not necessarily permanent, because what permanent means to you and me is that it's here to stay and that it won't go away. But index universal life is considered to be permanent life insurance, just like what I represent, which is whole life insurance. Now, there's agents out there that will actually say that, you know, my clients that are looking for a less expensive solution, um, what they consider maybe even better bang for the buck. That's the way the consumer might look at it. So agents will say, if that's what they're looking for, I'll sell them an IUL, an Index Universal Life Policy. But if they're a little more savvy, they they look into this, they do their own due diligence, they listen to me, they want to be guided, then I'll sell them the whole life policy. Well, that isn't the whole world, that isn't everything. But I can tell you, again, there's a real push of energy of marketing behind these index universal life policies and annuities, which is funny to me because the whole financial industry, including the qualified plans that I've talked about, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, all of it, right, is driven by what I would call the big general Wall Street push, right? And the marketing and the education and the dominance through search engines and so forth. But the fact is, after they've got you to do all that, and there's been a lot of money made, not, a lot of times it's more money, sorry I didn't mute that, there's more money being made by those selling products than those that are actually investing their money to create, a retirement savings or so forth. Really sorry about that. I'm probably gonna have to do this over again, but I'll see how it comes out. So they end up selling you another product later on down the road. They convert this into guaranteed income through an annuity stream, right? They annuitize this pile of money so that you can have money for life. But of course, there's always an exchange of something for something else, and you might not be getting as much as you should. The way I look at it is the foundation of your financial world should be a whole life insurance policy. Now, it's because of what you can do with this whole life insurance policy, which is truly permanent, because it has a day of reckoning. They're going to pay out as long as you keep it in force by paying your premiums. There is a point where you might not have to pay any more premiums, but as long as you keep it in force, it never goes away. But in index universal life, there's so many little caveats that can make this thing go sideways and end up falling out, meaning it lapses, you don't want to pay anymore, and then the money that you may have borrowed that's outstanding is now no longer tax advantaged, which means all of a sudden it becomes taxable. You no longer have life insurance. You could have been paying into this for a couple decades, which happens to a fair amount of people. Because this is where I'll beat up a little bit on the industry, is they didn't want to lose to this idea that was pushed by a gentleman named A.L. Williams, who sold his business that became Primerica. Some of you might know about it. It was a multi-level marketing type organization, but really what their real pitch was, and you might have heard this term, buy term and invest the difference, which meant buy term life insurance, right, which expires at some point. Yes, some of it's convertible, all that good stuff, but take that as being the least expensive life insurance. So pay the least for the most of death benefit that you can get, and rather than pay for permanent whole life insurance policy, and take that difference of what it would cost to buy the more so-called more expensive and invest it in the market. Well, the industry said, oh my gosh, the life insurance industry said, whoa, they've gone and pushed on this with Congress. They've been blessed. This is a big marketing machine. I mean, even as of recently, again, I'm not trying to beat up on Primerica. I'm using them as the driver of this, right? There was over 60,000 agents, some of them full-time, many part-time, maybe not really all that active, but regardless, there was a lot of people pitching this, and then even pitching it to try to get other friends, family, whatever, into the business. Now, the insurance company said, we've got to come up with a product Well, what they did was they basically took a permanent life insurance policy, really, and turned it into a temporary. They turned it into term. So the insurance component of an index universal life, or an IUL that you may have heard of, has term insurance. It has no permanent insurance. So they're buying a term policy every year as long as that policy is in force. Well, the price, as you get closer and closer to the normal mortality for your age, the price of that term insurance keeps going up. The other component, which is invest the difference, is being invested in the market. Well, not technically, not directly. It's indexed to something that mirrors the market, like the S&P 500. And so when you say, I'm going to invest in an index universal life policy, I have life insurance, but then I have a component that's mirroring some aspect of the stock market. And what they market this as is something that has a floor of no lower than 0. So annually, you will never lose. Even if the market's down for the year, you will be floored at 0%. But the issue is there's a ceiling. So even if the market goes up, say 10%, 20%, 25% that particular year, they have capped it, meaning they have stopped. There's a ceiling to it. It could be 8, 9, percent, which means, yes, you didn't drop on those years, but you never gained the big gains that to get to these so-called averages, or even the real rate of return, but the averages don't play out. But when they create these illustrations of what these policies will look like as time goes by, they use historical average returns of this index to the stock market. And so what you have is, you have one piece, the term life insurance, continuing to increase, and you might have a market that's kind of going sideways. So you're not really growing at the projections that they had proposed when you bought the policy, right? So this is where it seems like it's less expensive than a whole life insurance policy, because I'm buying all real cheap life insurance, but I also have this piece where I've got to have these returns that are mimicking the good returns of the stock market. But if those aren't happening, and then you have this term insurance that keeps increasing, eventually your cost can exceed what your growth is within the policy. So you can start eating into the cash value. Now, I'm an infinite banking practitioner for the Nelson Nash Institute, and the way I structure a permanent whole life policy is really about the cash value. So I promote it as a capital pool that you're creating, an emergency fund, an opportunity fund. It also has the death benefit, but you also have the ability to borrow against these policies. And when you're borrowing against these policies, you're not literally taking your cash out. So your cash value never drops. It only grows. Okay? Again, it's not about an investment. Though I have to say, it's a great investment in your financial stability. It's the foundation, it's the rock solid foundation of certainty, of guarantees. And that's why whole life holds up better long term, because it's got a guarantee. As long as you paying your portion of paying into the policy, which again, if it's structured correctly, most of it's building cash. Excuse me. And so you have all these benefits, but you don't have the downside. Now, if you want to invest in things, now you have this capital pool. But if you're in a situation where things go sideways in the market and your costs keep going up, and then eventually you have to back out of the policy, like I said, you've lost all the tax advantages, and you've lost the death benefit, and which is the protection for your loved ones, and you no longer have this capital pool, and you feel like, hey, I was duped. So I am beating up a little bit on the life insurance industry, saying you guys have not really educated the public. In fact, you guys got out of the sales business. You created product, and it's all these independent agents where there's, yes, there's supposed to be some oversight to all of us, and of course there is. We're licensed in each and every state that we can, sell a policy in. There's a lot of protections, but there's also a lot of stuff that's going on out in the market where the consumer, once again, buyer beware. And you guys are inundated with so much about finances and who says what you should do with your money that your head spins, including my thoughts about what I'm going to share. I'm not saying this is everything in life. There's so much more to life. This is what I do for a living. This is what I'm trying to share with you. There's an option. There's an option to not even have life insurance. There's an option to have two different types of permanent or multiple types. But the original permanent life insurance was whole life. The risk was 100% on the insurance company to perform. What this IUL did was it shifted the ratio, and it put a bunch of burden on the consumer, on the policyholder, and they don't know that they're being put into this position, because I've talked to some agents who say, like I said earlier, when they want the cheaper solution of permanent life insurance, I sell them the IUL, because I can make the numbers look better. I can make it look less expensive. It's the way these things are illustrated, and they're illustrated completely different with a whole life insurance policy. Again, I'm not focused on the life insurance, but if you're hearing people tell you that you should go with an IUL, in fact, you could even do infinite banking. There's a gentleman out there that's talking about doing infinite banking with IULs. Well, I can tell you, the developer, the creator of the infinite banking concept, R. Nelson Nash, he totally said IULs are not to be used, because he knows that they can do what we call imploding, which means they basically crumble to the ground, as you know, and you're left with nothing. You're left with none of the tax advantages, none of the life insurance, and you've lost some additional money to taxes. And people don't really know this until things do move along through the years. And it could be 5 years, it could be 10, but it's likely to be 20 years down the road, and you'll be like, okay, first I owned term insurance, that went away, I felt like I got duped there. Then I bought an IUL, I feel like I got duped there. It looks like the blame is on the life insurance industry. I'm just here to try to explain that there's some other things going on. Please let me know if I can help. I'd be happy to have a conversation about all this. I like a long-term relationship. Doesn't mean we have to talk all the time, but I like the idea that I'm not trying to just sell you something today and move on to the next person. I'm here to have the conversation until you don't want to have it anymore, meaning even before you enter into a policy, till you feel comfortable, and then you can follow me, not follow me, reach out, we can communicate, but there's no requirement or table, excuse me, for you to get going. You don't have to do this in any particular time frame, and so I look forward to talking with you. Thanks. Bye.